Hello, boys and girls. I'd like to welcome an El Paso photographer to the Weather Kids blog. His name is Alex Montero, and he's an incredible photographer. And the Weather Kids would like to ask you, Mr. Montero, some questions about photography and the creative process, and just basically what brought you to where you are today.
Okay.
Your first question is from Melissa.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi. What is the secret to making or to taking a good photo?
Oh, I know all the questions are going to be like that. I am better at using my camera than talking, but the thing about photography and art, it's very subjective. So we do art in the hopes that most of the audience will accept it, but we're not really trying. I guess in my case, I'm not trying for a certain audience, other than my clients maybe. I'm trying to please them. But typically, just like as art, it's subjective, so it's really up to the viewer to tell really what's successful. But I think if it captures somebody's attention, it makes them sit there and look at an image, for example, at a museum, and give it some attention and maybe ask some questions about it, I think that could probably be that it's successful.
What inspired you to be a photographer?
What inspired me to be a photographer? Wow, that's another good question, because I started when I was a little boy. How old are you guys? 10. That's. I remember going to a vacation, and I remember the first photo I ever took, and it's gonna be funny, but you know how sometimes you're on a road trip and you stop to use the bathroom. Well, in Mexico, there's not like a lot of bathrooms and all that, so we stopped off the road, and I had borrowed a 35mm camera, which is advanced for a 7-year-old boy, and I just wanted to borrow this camera from my aunt, and I took it on the trip, and not even knowing what I was doing, when I went down there on the bushes, I saw this really neat flower that would come out of a trunk of a tree, and it just captured my attention, so I went back and got my camera and I took a photo of it. And back in the day, it wasn't digital, so you'd have to go to the lab and develop the photo by someone who you would pay, and it was like Christmas waiting for your photos. And when I got them, I was so excited to see what I had done that I really thought that's what I wanted to do. And I got to, sorry to make it so long, but I got to junior high and they offered photography, and I went in there, and I have a couple of personal reasons that I'll tell you a little more later, but I just saw that it was so interesting, and they told it. The teacher, by the way, as soon as we walked in that first day, I remember it was 7th grade, and they told us she had to leave to the office. They had called her, and she left all of us, 8 of us, and it was all young ladies, and I was the only boy, and they told us, go in the dark room, turn off the lights, and find your way around, and do this and that. I was like, oh, I'm the only boy, and there's all this, they were really handsome young ladies, so I was like, I think I really like this. Then eventually I started going in the hallways, and people were so happy, and they wanted to get in the yearbook, and they always wanted me to, they always wanted me. They're like, hey Alex, please take our photo, and even the meanest, toughest guys would behave better around me because they wanted to be pleasant to me, so they would get in the yearbooks. So, can you pause that?
Would you rather take pictures of people or landscapes?
That's also a very good question. Most photographers are forced to be either an architecture photographer or a landscape photographer or a portrait photographer, or they actually try to put you in a niche and that's where you're at. But I don't know if you know this, but photography means, it's from the Greek words from photon and graphy. So it's photon is what? Light. Photo is photon. Graphy is writing. So it's actually means writing with light. So photography means writing with light, and I love writing with light so much that I don't really particularly put myself in one aspect of photography, but if I had to choose, it's people, portraiture. I really love photographing people, especially you guys, children. That's my favorite time when I do the school portraits. Is my favorite photography.
What is your best advice for someone who wants to be a photographer?
Okay. I don't know if they say that you're successful at something when you do it and you live off of it. And so I've been doing it for 30 years, so I guess in a way I'm successful. And when I would look at people that were successful and brilliant and they were the top of the top, what they would always say is you have to do something with all your heart, 24 hours a day, non-stop. So I would eat, breathe, and everything photography. I would read all the books from all the past artists. So that's something I would advise you to do. Read and look at magazines and look at beautiful photos and get an idea of what it is that you might like in photography, and then go after that. Nowadays with the internet, guys, the sky's the limit. But I would really advise you, if you want to be a photographer, first be let's say a doctor, have a career, and then you can photography is something you could do even after work and learn, and really, if you're really into it, you could learn it on your own, and this way, if it doesn't work out, because art is really hard, and then you have your real career. But you can always buy a great camera and do great photography, even if you have a great profession. So that's what I would advise you. And I don't want your parents killing me if you go off to some art school instead of doctor school.
What's the best time of the day to take a photo?
That's a very good question. You know what happens when I don't know if you guys ever wake up at 4 in the morning or 5 in the morning, but you know how when you come out at 12 at noon, the sun is just so bright that it just kind of makes you squint, and it's not the best of light, and that's what we call flat light in photography. Light hits so many places that there is no definition. So the best time to answer your question is really early morning or really late in the afternoon. At least that's my preference. There are photographers that love to shoot in the middle of the day. There's not many of them. It's really hard. And when you're trying to do photography, it's two-dimensional. So you really try to do photography that it looks three-dimensional. Two-dimensional is a piece of paper that will have height and width, but there is no depth to it. And something with depth is three-dimensional. And photography, you're trying to make something like this look like this. So it's really, really hard. And the way we do it is with lighting, and lighting happens to work better when it's coming from this direction. So let's say you would get a light here and a shadow on the other side, and that gives you form. So to answer your question, I really love to shoot really early morning or really afternoon, and my models hate it because I wake them up at 5 in the morning.